Voice of Stewart Pearce, and welcome to my series of deep dialogues. These are vital conversations I engage in with global soul stewards from all over the planet, providing us with vital understandings about how we can create a new hierarchy of values to help us evolve into a brave new world. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. And here we are. Welcome, beacons of light. We have the wonderful Pamela with us today, who is an immensely clear channel. So welcome everybody, and particularly welcome to my dear friend Pamela, who I haven't actually sat with for a number of many moons. So I'm very pleased that you're here. And of course, suspended, as we were just sharing, in this beautiful season of female global soul stewards. And you're number 5, so representing the sacred teacher, the sacred hierophant. So it couldn't be more perfect as far as I'm concerned. So for those of you who are thinking, well, who is Pamela? As usual, I will adorn her by sharing with you her wonderful bio. Pamela Aaralyn is a renowned global channel, mystic, spiritual teacher, and devotee of sacred sound. She also writes and propagates within the field of consciousness and mysticism in a very profound way. Now, Pamela has channeled God-realized masters such as Sri Ramana Maharshi, Jesus, and Ma Anandamayi for, well, since childhood, and has been a devotee of their sacred teachings and lineage. So therefore, she is teaching the literal embodiment of grace and compassion in all of her work, which of course is multifarious, it's multi-layered. Indeed, through her evocation of love as a spiritual mentor, she offers satsangs, mentorship, and live events with many recordings to everyone from all spiritual backgrounds. And somebody says, Pamela is awesome already, so that's beautiful. So my darling, welcome on the eve of St. Valentine, the time for us to really reach into the substance of that ideal of love that we're all literally yearning for, so that we feel our connection with Source. And I know that you're engaged in some major projects at the moment, which we can talk about, although they're in the process of, you've recorded them and now they're being processed as recordings. Perhaps we can start there, that you're offering to the world these wonderful recordings, and one of them is called The Lights of Lemuria.
Yeah, that's what we're currently working on, and it's been a powerful endeavor thus far. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to sit with you, and I consider you one of my dearest friends on this planet, and your presence graces so many souls. Thank you for being that light and embodying that grace so powerfully and humbly. I don't see a lot of people who have that true grace of humility anymore, particularly in our industry, dare I say. I will dare to say that you are one of the few that hold this incredible grace so well. Thank you for that, and thank you for having me again today.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, the Lights of Lemuria. I sang before I talked. Language has always been a bit of a confusing thing for me. As a teacher, I trust that I can become articulate through the grace that arises.
Mm-hmm.
But as a musician, people kept wanting me to sing English, sing opera, sing in various languages. And I didn't want to do that. One day, I just started singing what was coming forth. And that's how Sacred Songs of the Heart and Sacred Songs of the Heart Reprisal were born. Just singing what actually came, and it was the language of light. And it was from all sorts of time, and I began to get visions beyond time as well, into the deep cosmic spaces of Lemuria. And a lot of the, you and I share this in common with Angels of Atlantis, and it's just an incredible space to be able to remember these times And I wanted to bring about this through ancient activation. So that's what the album is called, Lights of Lemuria, the Ancient Activations. So some of you on my Patreon page right now are getting a chance to hear some of it just raw and uncut and all of its glory. And it's going to be a wonderful thing to share. And I'm going to be sharing it as low cost as absolutely possible. I never make any money off of my albums ever. It's all about just being able to share it in an affordable way. And it'll be on YouTube, and it'll be on Spotify and Pandora and iTunes and all the places that you could find it. So that's what's arising. I can't wait to share it with you.
I'm so excited, to meet you at this time with this very specific emission that's arising. And of course, you were sharing with me before we came on air that you also journeyed many, many thousands of miles to a very unique sound chamber that allowed you to record in. Perhaps you could mention the Integratron and its significance to you.
Oh my heavens, I was so nervous. And this was the first time that I had actually recorded my own music, pressing all the buttons and doing all the stuff and managing all the sound and sitting there by my preamp going, no, that doesn't sound good. Turn this up, turn this down, and then trying to channel, and then being so utterly enticed by the energy of the Integratron, because as many of you know, if you've listened to it or if you've visited the Integratron, there's this sound capsule right in the center. And George Van Tassel, who created this, was also a Venusian contactee, and he had all of these amazing plans for the place before his passing. And I can say that that sound and the way that it transmits, it comes up into this dome-like energy, and then it showers back upon you and then creates a whisper effect all around you. So that was an interesting technical challenge to not have too much reverb on, a raw cut of things. And then just to kind of stay in your body, because if you're recording yourself, you have all these buttons to push and all these other technical things to manage, and you don't want to just fly away like you do if you have someone doing it for you. So it was an incredible experience. I didn't want to leave.
And so the interconnectivity of the fact that George created it
Yeah.
from Venusian inspiration, from star system inspiration, for us at this time of immense awakening, the age of Aquarius, and particularly, of course, as we know, the great remembrances from the civilizations of Lemuria or Mu and Atlantis. And of course, you have this really tangible connection with the Gaia, don't you, through your shamanic practices, which I believe is going all the way back into childhood and your blood lineages. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is it about Lemuria and all the varying emanations of Lemuria that you feel is so specifically relevant for us at this time?
Right now, we're all receiving a call to go within, to just disconnect from distractions. There's a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, a lot of things just beckoning our attention, other things other than our own soul. And as you so aptly titled this talk on the principles of psychic connection, how can we connect to source when we don't know the soul, when we don't understand the visceral, practical, simple technologies of grace itself? And it's difficult to become a channel for that if you don't get back to your roots. And Lemuria is the root. It's the prime core of who we are, raw and real and true. And when I'm in that language, I don't think about anything. My head stops, all of the fears go away. All of the, you didn't do this today and you didn't return so-and-so's email, or all of the things just go away. And I can return to that space of divine sound current that invigorates my own connection to this land. And then it helps me to become a proper steward of this land, and of all the ancestors who wish for us to heal these lands and to heal to connect beyond culture, to connect beyond time, to connect beyond conditions of society. That's what Lemuria does. It's beyond what we've created, and it returns us to what we've forgotten, which is a lot. We've forgotten a lot. And those simple memories can heal the body, heal the mind, return us to our own connection, to our own soul, to our own mastery, if you will.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, the indigenous people of North America, although they meet from a sociological positioning to be in plight, at the same time, right at the very core of their ethos, right at the core of their belief system, is this amazing connection with the simplicity of the soul speaking, whether it be the soul within us, the soul within the plant, the soul within the antelope, the soul within the bird, or the crawling creatures. And you have a particular ancestry within the indigenous people, I believe. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's Catawba tribe.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from. And Catawba has almost been forgotten and covered as such an older tribal system. And most of the time, it's not state supported. I don't remember my parents ever saying that we were state supported or that we had. It was very difficult to remember those the ways of life in that in a modern culture, coming in this century. And remembering Lemuria was easier than remembering a culture that's all but forgotten.
But at the same time, with your awareness of the indigenous peoples, that they awaken within us a deep, deep, deep remembering, which I sense is also what your project with the lights of Lemuria is all about, a deep, deep, deep cellular, subatomic memory of simplicity of life when it's lived in grace.
Yes, yes. And indigenous people have no choice but to remember that, or their cultures will be forgotten. Our languages will be forgotten. Even the term Native American doesn't suffice. That's what a white person says about an indigenous person, but it doesn't. It's for educational purposes. It doesn't really suffice. And the word indigenous belongs to not just tribes, but what's beyond that, which is the deepest connection to the land itself, and to Great Spirit itself. And we are responsible for holding that grace, holding that energy, reminding our children of it. And it comes about in the languages, it comes about in the songs, it comes about in the stories. And hopefully won't be forgotten. Hopefully it can be a reminder of all of the legacies from our modern indigenous times all the way back to ancient indigenous times, that we all can remember something every single time we access grace, so that we all remember that we're indigenous. Color aside, we're all indigenous. I don't want to go beyond that, or it'll turn into something else.
I hear you. And I'm intrigued by the constructs that you were using earlier of the way that, for example, our recognition of this post-COVID period is the fact that things are moving so fast and that people are so pixelated in their opinionation of what the world is about.
Right.
And yet at the same time, there is this great thirst for the deeper connection with soul, with spirit. And you have this very rare interconnectivity with spirit, with the consciousness of spirit, as we were saying, with the land and with the Lemurian consciousness. What are the great teachings that you feel are percolating out of that body of consciousness to help us align ourselves in our modern lives, in our contemporary existence, where we all have to, go to the grocery store, we all have to interface with banks? Well, I guess we don't have to if we're completely off grid. But, being off grid, there's always some level of societal compromise that we have to make. So, I'm just thinking of the project that I mentored for many years in the Dominican public where they've created an eco-sustainable community where they live in co-creation with nature. One of the great principles that we had to look into was how to enter into a conversation which is still filled with grace in relation to the bank for the mortgage, or going to the grocery store, or dealing with medical issues. If somebody on a retreat became unwell and needed medical attention, all of that, how to keep the vibration really high. Anyway, the point were principles of psychic connection. You are so in tune with the psyche of soul, with the psyche of spirit. What do you find yourself constantly returning to as the remembrances, but also the great tools to reconnect people with the principles of psychic connection?
Breath, sound, nature.
Mm.
It's really that simple. What I've noticed, I'm not sure if you're noticing the same in a modern day community, particularly in spiritual communities, is that there's too much influence, in my opinion, on the clairs. I must see externally. I must see something that validates. I must feel something, in a physical mediumship capacity, or I must feel my body warm up or cool down, or I must feel the mediums call it the spirit bumps, the truth bumps, that raise the hair at the top of your head. And so many people are looking for validation through separation.
Mm.
What if you looked towards validation through connection?
Mm.
And in order to connect, you actually can't see two individuals or two souls. You just see a stream of God energy that doesn't have to even be seen. It doesn't have to be felt. It just is. Why are we looking to see it first, or hear it first, or validate that it's true or right or wrong or helpful or unhelpful? All of that type of connection will only be visceral and temporary at best. It can be an interesting beginning journey in psychic connection. I was just talking to someone today who's telepathic, and she's just waking up and she gets all of her downloads through her mind. And she's brilliant. She's a very brilliant mind. She's got a law background, and she writes like policy, and in another country. And she does this all day. And her head is just going, but also the God mind's there, flowing through, opening up, saying, hey, listen, hey, I'm here. Connect to yourself, and I'm here. I can't be far from you because I'm right here in your soul, right? So one of the things I told her today was just to focus. There's this little technique I'll share with you, if you don't mind. It takes 30 seconds at best. I call this the one technique, and it's prana oriented.
Mm.
So you know how you're counting sheep when you're trying to sleep, and as long as you're counting, something's happening that you're not thinking. So as opposed to counting up or down, which will bring you back into a hierarchical realm, just count one, and not the number, just like O-N-E, like you're seeing the letter, just oneness. You're counting one, and you're breathing in from the base of your spine. And if this is the base of your spine, you're going to inhale up your spine and push that energy up. A lot of people push energy down. Why? Push from the base of your spine. You're everything that you need. Why are we pulling things in? Right? Push from the spine and push that energy up. So inhale up while saying one, one, one. And then when you get here, hold the energy. Just retain it as if you have a helmet on your head for a few seconds. Count to 3, whatever you want to do. And then exhale, long, deep yoga breath back down the spine. Just back down the spine. So this is an in through the nose, out through the mouth. And it's a brain reset. Anything you're thinking, you will not be thinking while you're doing that. So that's an instantaneous connection to the soul. That's your psychic connection. You don't need it from a spirit guide. I almost feel hypocritical sharing this with you, Stewart, because I talk to angels and all sorts of spirit guides. And but what I really love best is when that just goes away.
Mm.
And I just feel the quietness of my own soul,
Mm. Mm.
the cosmic soul.
I cohere. I completely cohere. But I'd love to just frame what you've shared, because it's very tangible what you're sharing, but it's also, it emits a different pulse for me, because what you're making us aware of and beware of are the fixations that we're developing on the pure, isolated sensory body, which leads us into separation. Because we know that our senses are at the edge of our consciousness, but everybody's pixelating into separation because they're trying to find out, as you were saying, in the deliberation of, am I clairsentient, am I clairaudient, am I, etc., etc., which is moving us away from the absolute principle of what true psychic connection is, which is the oneness of the oneness. God is me is God, we are one. And so you're bypassing all of that, which is wonderful because it's operating into the field of the revolution of the empaths, where we see ourselves not separated from society. We see ourselves as being part of, but a higher vibrational functioning, so that empathy is moving through every pulse and every breath rhythm of every day. And therefore we become one. And we move into the simplicity of that stillness and silence that you were talking of. Which is, we need to upgrade this process for ourselves, don't we? You know, the old composites were, you must meditate once a day, which is again developing a fixation. And actually, by tuning into breath, by tuning into sound, we can do it a little and often throughout the day, whenever we need to really feel that oneness with the divine.
Yeah.
I feel that's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. I believe it was Master Rinpoche that said meditation is a trap, as well as the lovely Baba Ram Das, who said you meditate only until you get out of that trap. And then Sri Ramana Maharshi said we meditate until we're meditating without meditating. And then in our modern culture, that turned into walking meditation. And you see people like I don't know, like Walt Whitman and Richard Jefferies, like walking around. The Story of My Heart is a beautiful example of a walking meditation, and how he felt great spirit just upon lying upon a grassy knoll. Things like that really inspire me to connect to the soul itself.
Mm, mm. And of course, when we speak of psychic connection, we're really talking about that immense connection with psyche, with the spirit of ourselves, with the spirit of the universe, with the spirit of divine intelligence, aren't we?
Yes.
Rather than let's be psychic.
Yeah. Let's be psychic because it would be fun. And I know some of us are beyond that at this point. We want to help, we want to serve. And I feel so many people coming to me wanting to be in my mentorship program so they can activate, so that they can serve. And that's what COVID brought to us, that beautiful opportunity, and to open up to that. But what I find now in a modern world, as you so succinctly put it, we are so distracted. We have so many things to do, and it can be so easy to disconnect, from that cosmic realm of the soul so quickly.
Mm, mm,
So I find a lot of psychic energy hygiene practices a lot more important for me personally than, say, a 2-hour meditation, but just learning how to breathe, learning how to manage my own energy field.
mm,
And like I said, sound, breath, and nature are my go-tos in every capacity.
I'm finding myself say a lot. It's
Mm.
something that formally I've been teaching for nearly 50 years, but formally reminding people about breath and how it's literally the key and the door to the whole experience. And I'm often met with confusion. It's that simple. And then, of course, we realize that, yes, it is the virtue is that simple. But then we move into the firmament of the wonder, which we could, on one level, refer to as being complexity, on another level, the simplicity of moving into the vastness of that field. I've always wanted to share Egypt with you, as you know, and
We're going to do that one day. We are.
we were back there in December. I should be back in April. I'm just recruiting people for the April retreat now. And the point being that when we walk into the light computers, the great star temples, that of course we know that they are decorated with so many offerings, so many prayers, and that our modern mind can become again pixelated by the vastness of what is being offered. And yet, what's also interesting is that the corpus is just one whole oneness of the oneness that always will, shall be, and forevermore. And so it's really interesting noticing how post-COVID, these light receptors are really switched on to the simplicity of the field that you're speaking of.
Mm.
So I'd love to share that with you. I'm just a little prompting for you to remind you. Maybe December. Come, 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 come. I'd
Mm.
love to share that with you. Um, Again, as you move into the currents of Lemuria, there's a vast intelligence which is pouring through to remind us of those times, but also from the perspective of where we are in the element of time. Although we're speaking of a field of quanta that is beyond time, as we know. I wonder if there are any particular points that come through the lights of Lemuria and the particular words that, or I know you're dealing purely with non-verbal sound, or at least I feel you are. Are there any words, though, within the verbalization of our intelligence that come forth that we need to be reminded of?
Um, they are languages that if you listen, the Telosian language and the Lemurian languages come through, and you'll start to recognize the feeling behind certain of the words. Like I say the word La Alma a lot, which means cosmic soul and love light soul. Um, and then another one, Kemonte is another song, which means call to home or return to home. Hear this call to home, which is a big theme of return home to the soul always. And when I first started singing these callings, I had much like many people here, the whole difficult childhood experience and things. And I would go to sleep at night hearing these callings and hearing these beings singing Telante, Telante. And I didn't know what it meant. And I could feel it. You can feel they're saying, come home, come where you're safe. Come follow. And they would always say, follow this light. And, you know, and I didn't have fear as a little child. And I teach a lot in the New Age constructs and community, and some people have these concept of false light and all these things that I have no idea what that even means. Like all light is wonderful for me. I don't have any programs of anything false about love and light, but I would just follow this light, and it would lead me to this place that just is really indescribable. I can't articulate it in my language to you, but I knew in those moments that that's home. That's always going to be home. That's the original human, the original Lemurian human.
Mm.
Um, and I just, wanted to put all these callings on this album so people could use them to feel safe, to return to the soul when they feel distracted. There's a lot of distractions going on in a modern world, and systems are cracking and crumbling, and we don't have a new system to replace them yet. So there's a lot of angst. So my goal in returning these languages to you was to literally learn, like listen to the languages, because you won't be able to use separation with these languages. You literally won't.
Mm.
You won't be able to find words for every single phrasing in the Lemurian language, but you will feel what it means. It can only lead you to oneness. And when you experience the cognitive dissonance that comes along with societal structures crumbling without anything to replace them, when you feel that confusion, that's why the light language is there,
Mm.
to get beyond that. Because that cognitive dissonance is one of the biggest struggles that I'm seeing right now in psychic connection, as people saying, well, it needs to be this way and it needs to be that way. Well, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that. And why does your channeling sound different from this channeling? And I'm going, hey, go in here and get your own channeling. Go in here and listen. Don't worry about anybody or anything else. Go trust yourselves.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. I'm so glad you're able to be with people in that way, because this is why I love you so much, because there's a consonance with what I'm also doing. So we're really preparing people to truly understand their spiritual sovereignty, and that this is. I keep feeling that the angels teach me that this is a year when there will be a death to the king archetype and a rebirth to the archetype of the superheroes, the avatars. And it's interesting that somebody that I want to connect you with, who is bringing all of this wisdom into governing principles that are, as we know, are quaking, but as they quake, they're also being reformed by interesting people that may not be totally visible or audible at this time, but who are stepping in, who are very pure in heart and smart in mind, but also have the multiplicitousness of what the varying areas of consciousness can be awakened to allow us to return to the purity, for example, of sacred commerce.
Yeah.
And her second book is called The Quest of the Avatars, of how we can feel that the ascended beings, our own channeled forces, the angels, the great elementals are really all avatars that are wanting to teach us, as well as the embodied beings that we know out of the spiritual lineage of the East that we can connect with, whether it be Satya Sai Baba or Yogananda or Anandamayi, you know, all of these extraordinary beings, that they're all part of this great confluence of energy that is bringing us back to the oneness of all. And so I love what you're saying about the transcendental nature of the sound mechanisms that often, although I was surrounded by sound as a child and I needed to find some way of articulating it. The way that I did articulate it was through self-muting for 2 years and just sitting in absolute silence and observing, so that the sounds that I was seeing through waves of energy became recognizable within the substance of what I perceived my consciousness to be about 8, 9, 10, which was called all feeling based. And that's
Yeah.
what you're saying as well, that feeling really is the language of the soul, and that what we're returning people to is that metaphoric consciousness of being involved within the poetry, within the great song and the great dance of life.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, we need to stop squabbling about identifying ourselves. uh, what psychic connection do you have? But coming back into the very fulsome nature of what the psyche is all about. You, I know, are a woman of immense hope, which is based on the principle of the great legacy of teachings, the wisdom traditions that percolate through you. The hope for the future in terms of the way that we're creating this new hierarchy of values. Do you have specific hopes that you see lights suddenly developing within societal mind or within cultural mind?
I unintentionally brought rise to a new project, a new endeavor called Humans from the Future. As I began to connect outside of time, I recognized that it wasn't strictly just me connecting to the great masters of the past, but what about our children in the future? Right. And what about the great masters that are forming now? Um, what about the central nature of mastery that connects in everyone? Everyone. So I accidentally happened upon a, a future construct. And what I saw blew my mind. I saw 3 different collectives of people. One collective called themselves the Unified Nations Order or United Nations Order, the UNO. They were very modern. They were all sorts of use of medical AI, not AI that people are afraid of. I'm not talking about the type that takes over your consciousness, or becomes your consciousness or becomes its own consciousness, but artistic AIs and servant type of AIs that help you save someone's life in a medical endeavor. And then I saw another group of people, they called themselves the New Earth Order. And they were living in these earth domes that were incredibly intricate and advanced and still completely in accordance with the land without hurting it or stripping it of its vital nutrients or water or polluting anything. That was incredible. And then I met another group of beings who called themselves the RRO, or the Republican Renegade Order, and they were feisty. And they were hilarious, and they loved our music. And this is like more than 100 years later. It was the year 2111 to be exact. So I call this group my 2100s. My 2100s, the humans from the future, year 2100. And this group, the RRO, they were all about living so directly off the land that everything that you owned had to be completely, the bricks they made by hand, the metal they would mine themselves, completely off the grid, very traditional and simultaneously open-minded. So I threw it out there, I do. I just went on YouTube and said, here it is. And everybody went, oh my God, that's scary. And some people went, oh my goodness, that's wonderful. But I could perceive how we were like 50% ready for it and 50% afraid of the confines and restrictions that we need to just drop in order to move into this, in order to move into a land where people have division, but they also respect oneness. They work together. All three of these cultures work together all around the world. I don't know even how I got off on this subject, but I felt the core of consciousness in that. And just being able to drop things that no longer serve us and to work together despite our belief systems, these three very different belief systems still living and thriving and healing Earth.
Yes, it was the question I asked you about hope. And it's fascinating that we are embraced by this title just to ground us in this frame of time that we're speaking and sharing in, which of course, in a sense, is very timeless. Although we're sitting here in these time zones, that this recording will go forth and be listened and listened and listened in different time zones. But just as we see the world going through its diminution process, I mean by that when I see the world, when we see the social organizing systems that are essentially the patriarchal constructs that are once worked but no longer work, that we're developing these very new ways of being, this new hierarchy of values. Therefore, our social systems have to change, and that can be debilitating for us where we feel unsafe and insecure. And so hope springs eternal, which is what the inspiration in my question was. And you've just answered it so extraordinarily by moving into future time, future space, future being is possibly a better way of putting it, because in many ways, time and space had moved through its own distortionary process to evoke the three great unified kingdoms, so to speak.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. You have to meet Anna Lou Smitzman, who was on Deep Dialogues last week, because it's all part and parcel. You'll see when you connect the two of you of the inspiration of what you share. I think it's wonderful. You have utter belief in your psychic connection. And this utter belief is based on
grace. Everyone has that. That's a gift. You don't work for it. You don't earn it. It's not a part of your societal happenstance. It's not your caste system. Grace is everyone's, and it is an energy that flows through all of life. And I don't know that I believe in the whole term psychic ability. It's not an ability. We're using a deeper nature in our brains, in the human brain and in the God mind that opens up the human brain. It's possible for us to use more than 10% of our brain capacity at any given point in time, but it's because of grace. If people can kind of get out of the whole, I need to do something to make grace happen theory, because grace is a state, it's an essence. And we have all these things we do like prayer and meditation and psychic energy hygiene and all these different things. But living in it is the hope. To answer your prior question, living in that state of grace provides the best hope for anything that you could possibly see to bring you out of the state of grace, for that matter. Just staying in it and working. That is the spiritual practice, just staying in it.
Beautiful. Can you go even further with your definition of what you experience on a feeling level, grace to be?
Grace is the sparking and evolution of a soul through time. Grace helps you embody within time while being non-restricted from it. Mm. You're in non-compliance with the time construct, yet you're so efficient within it because grace is the doer. Mm. Grace is the action point. It moves you, and you are like a confined machine with little wheels and cogs and all these things you're worried about. But when grace takes over, all those things start running together, and all the wheels turn together. And anything that needed grease got it all of a sudden, right? Anything that needed care and love and healing, suddenly grace did that, because that is the realm of the miracle. Mm. And grace keeps you open to that. But you have to evolve. Grace is the reason for that evolution. Mm. Without it, we don't evolve through time.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful. Wow. Wow. I'm so glad that we have a recording of what you've just shared. That was absolutely wonderful. It's just such a beautiful exposition. So it moves us away from I need to do grace, and it moves us into I need to do, I am being grace. And therefore we lean, is this accurate? We lean into the divine, and the divine does the doing for us. And that's when the magic and the miracles and the extraordinary serendipitousness or synchronicity or what we're saying, psychic attribution, suddenly awakens, because the sense field, the sensual and the sensory field opens and opens and opens in a multitudinous way within the mechanism of what it is to be human, the machine, as it were, the cogs and the wheels that you were referring to. Yeah. So if only we can just let go and let go, lean into,
yeah.
Drop in, steep in the silence and the stillness of presence.
Mm-hmm. That's what grace does, yeah.
There's that vast field of knowing. Yeah. And so please hear this, everybody, because this is radical information that Pamela's sharing with us. And you can see that when she speaks it, she evokes it. She is embodying it, which is only mustered from a state of being rather than constant doing. One or two people are beginning to ask questions, which is lovely. So there's a wonderful person called VI Tech. Aha. What are the main things we need to learn while on Earth? There's a bit of doing for you.
Someone on my spirit team once said to me, and he prefaced it with, "This is going to piss you off, Pamela." He said, "What if you're not here to learn anything?" Well, when we think about learning, it's an action word. The language isn't exactly appropriate, but one of the things that I can express to you is to remember what you have forgotten. We are here for what I call the great remembering. And if it were not for the great forgetting, we wouldn't need the great remembering. And that's not an action. I can't say we're here to do that. It will just happen. It is happening. And you can look all around you with the curiosity and the wonder around you. Just look. If you want to evidence this, look at all the technology that we're working with now. Could we have thought about this before the internet was even created? We would just say that person is not being graceful. They're being crazy. We'd say, oh, yeah, sure, that's going to happen. You've lost your rocker, right? So don't be so quick to dismiss the new brilliant things that are happening and to be so afraid of so many technologies. That was one thing that I learned from humans of the future, is that our humans right now are just as afraid of these new technologies that are coming in that are going to assist you. And they are beautiful, graceful technologies. And so many people are afraid of stepping into that as if it's something that's going to make them, be taken over, to make them lose their power, right? So that's something to be aware of. Look back in the 70s and 80s, and could you say that you were afraid People were afraid of Y2K, and then what happened? Nothing happened. Do you remember sitting up all night at Y2K going, okay, I might not go to work tomorrow, right? I just kind of went, oh God, here we go again. We do this about once every 10, 15 years, and we have to step into a new collective consciousness. And we're on this precipice. I don't know about you, Stewart, but I'm so excited to be on this precipice of change. Speaking of voice of change, this one is guiding you so succinctly into releasing your fears. But you can't be stuck in this paradigm of density by judging the potential of grace that is being offered to you. That won't get you anywhere. So I'd say perhaps we need to learn that openness, acceptance, wonder, right? But as a collective, I can't really perceive that we're here to learn much beyond that. We're here to stop thinking that we know everything. I'd rather unlearn.
Absolutely. So we're seeing the trajectory, the transcendental trajectory of that if our vibration is high, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, and we are in awe and in wonder of the mystery of the universe, then automatically all of the extraordinary aspect of creation that percolates out of the phenomenon of AI is all God-given.
Yeah.
Rather than there we are engaging in the neuroses of separation. We move into the glory of what diversity brings us, because it's over there and we're over here, and then we become one with it.
Yeah.
And lots of people are actually saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Feel and remember who we are, etc., etc. So it's absolutely wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving towards the latter part of our deep dialogue. So if there are any questions that anybody wants to ask, please do. The Voice of Change, like Princess Diana. Yeah, exactly. Do read my book, Diana, The Voice of Change, because it's all about the voice of change. It's the voice of the heart, which is what I'm being invited to speak about next week in a corporate identity in Los Angeles. That's going to be very interesting. So do ask any questions, anybody, because we have this world expert sitting with us. I know she's going to go, a little bit at that, because but we're, as we look into, we were referring to it at the beginning of our conversation, we were looking into the whole substance of the vastness of what is taking place within the emergence of this new level of consciousness, and how through COVID everybody has become highly specialized in their Zoom calling, and it seems that I'm hearing about a new modality and a new modality and another modality and another modality, and a lot of them are immensely sophisticated from an intellectual point of view. And I find myself saying, yes, but what about love? Surely at the core of all great healing modalities, whatever their expression or perception is, there has to be love. And it is the love that heals. So we're being reminded of coming back into the very core. Can Pamela grace us with a song of Lemurian remembrance? How do you feel about that, my darling?
I was just singing one for you. It was the homecoming is what I named this one, the Telosian homecoming. So you can learn a little bit of the Telosian language with this one if you want to write this down. It sounds so similar to like ancient Irish. Sometimes it reminds me of Portuguese. A slight feel of like some of the older Scottish, Irish, Gaelic stuff in there. So you can listen to it and sing along with it, but the call is Tea Lante, which is like Tea, La, long Te, not A, but Te, Tea Lante, Tea Lante, Kuriama, Kuriama. So that invites you back to your soul. Telan Krialma.
And so your namesake, Pamela, has heard from Pamela. Your namesake was asking the question. I hope that you feel within the incandescence of the vibration. Do you see what Pamela is communicating to us? It's absolutely beautiful. So, as always, it's interesting that there aren't any questions coming out because we're in a field beyond questions. Burbank Luther, what wonderful name. If a thing loves, it is infinite. William Blake, exactly. I am
Mm.
the love that I am. Exactly, exactly. Well done. Whoever Burbank Luther is, I love it. Or was it Luther Burbank? Wonderful name. So bless you for that. Absolutely. Um, so Pamela is producing constantly. How do you balance the chaos of the world while trying to raise your vibration? This is Buck speaking. Buck
Mm.
Hadlock. These
So
wonderful names.
I know, right? Yeah, I recognize that name. We just met not too long ago. Um, you're not going to like this. Sometimes grace challenges the ego, so please bear with me. The world's chaos is not your business. Finding love, seeing love. If you see chaos, forgive it. Stewart's teaching about forgiveness right now. It's a beautiful construct, and you can't have it without compassion. So when you get confused, when Stewart says love is at the base of everything, try using the word compassion instead. If you don't know exactly what love looks like, go into that and forgive what you are defining as chaos. Compassion will take over if you invoke it. That's one of the things that both Stewart's music and my music as well, and in his writing, a lot of the things that he's working on right now will help you with is to be able to invoke that compassion, because you can't have just a definition of, oh my gosh, that's chaotic and that's horrible. That really won't help you. Um, Finding compassion towards the world would be a great place to start, and recognizing that not everybody can carry grace. Not everyone is in that space of being able to be. I'm not either. I can't hold compassion for everything. I can be a jerk, at times. Ask my wife. Like, I'm not perfect. So, get me behind some traffic and we'll see how quickly that grace goes, right? So, so I sing my own light languages, when people are, being dangerous around my children. I'd rather sing, te ante, Tegalante, Kriyalma. I return to the light and love soul consciousness of Telos. And I call myself home. I'm no different from you. And in that regard, chaos can get to me, but I must be able to return to that very quickly. And that's what breath and sound does. That's what compassion does. Um, I saw the Dalai Lama in action at this once. I had the grace to see him do something like this. And I long for this type of grace, right? To just, I wish that I could do something to train myself in it, but that's not how it works. He was at a conference and someone came up after his speaking, and the person was just like attacking him with their pain. They were just like, wah, at him. And he said, I bless you. Touched them on the head, turned around and walked away. Right? And the person didn't even get mad. I was like, wow, 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 wow. Because some people confuse compassion with being able to fix and save everyone. And he is wise enough in that moment to know that it's not, he is a human being that can do that. There's grace was going to flow where grace was going to flow. And in that moment, grace said no, and I bless you. And grace walked away. So I just remember that example whenever you feel that the boundaries that you so deeply require are that you feel shame about that. He didn't feel an ounce of shame. He didn't budge. His face did not. The smile didn't leave. Nothing shifted.
I love it. No sentimentality.
Yeah, teach us traffic grace. I don't drive a lot these days, but when I do, and there's traffic grace to be had, I do sing. I really do. I
Yeah.
sing to the people that are mad at me.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all beeping and behind me for just doing the speed limit. I'm kind of a driving Miss Daisy person. So I'm that person that's like in the slow lane going 55, and miles per hour. And the person behind me is like, ah, glaring on the horn, leaning into it. And I'm like, na, na, na. That's typically my goal if I'm driving.
Yeah.
But it takes a little bit of time to get out of that nervousness that someone can project onto you. Because at first I'm not always that way.
Well, indeed, but, it's again, for me, you're a celebrant of the glory of diversity because we're still living the essence of duality, and yet we're talking about the future space where we're moving into the fullness of oneness. So, for example, there we are in a tax situation. I found myself going through this morning with my bank, and it was taxing me, and I was getting impatient. So
Mm,
immediately became aware of that, and post call was able to move into chant, and the whole thing transformed,
right,
rather than staying in the neuroses of separation and
right,
blaming and accusing, moving into insight and resolution, and lifting into the higher vibration and recognizing, oh, you mean I'm still human?
right,
I
right,
thought
right.
I was a celestial being. What is this?
Yeah. I was celestial beings still having to do taxes and go to the market and do the things that we need to do.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, it's interesting because those two possibilities that lie within the field of grace that we know of from our history of how can I be gracious and how can I be graceful,
Yeah.
that are these higher behavioral states that we refer to, which
Mhm.
is non-reactive, totally responsive, where we can actually bless somebody and then just walk away with grace, no sentimentality.
Yeah.
I um, I had the fortune, I think I shared this with you before, so forgive me for being repetitive or hackneyed, but many, many years ago, the president rather, of the Tibetan Association in Europe
Mhm.
came to me. He was a very elderly gentleman, octogenarian, who had to speak at the Royal Albert Hall, which holds over 5,500 people, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to welcome His Holiness Dalai Lama, who was going to sit on the stage and give forth teachings. But he was terrified. And so he came to me for teaching, and we really worked on his body, his breath, and we got him calm. And we, obviously released all of the impulses of I'm not good enough and so forth and so forth. So he was so touched by everything that had taken place. He said, I would love to invite you to be with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Well, I virtually fainted on the spot. Well, of course.
Yeah. I would have too.
And the event was a 7-day process with 20 people and His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he took us through the bodhicitta.
Yeah.
And we will reach the 8th proposition, which was to hold your enemy in your arms as though they were your sleeping mother. And there was a lady in the group who obviously did not grasp this.
Yeah.
And I knew she was going to burst at some point. Well, she burst and said, how would you know anything at all about this, in a really, really angry voice. And the whole room became completely black, so much so that you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And immediately the whole room was brilliant white light. And he sat there and said, out with anger, in with love. And of course, she dissolved into a wave of tears. She received the Shakti. She received the Siddhi consciousness.
Yeah.
The very remarkable energies can be transformed simply through the state of grace.
Right.
But the point is, there's no attachment to the outcome, is there? It's just moving through the indissoluble nature of weight, space, and time into the consciousness of the divine mind and bringing through, as you're doing with the lights of Lumeria. This has been a fascinating conversation as always, and I would love it to go on and on and on. But hey, everybody, we've moved to the finality. Are there any essential questions? You've all been so wonderful. Thank you for your attention. Tell all of your friends about Pamela's work. And Ryan will put up Pamela. There we are. Oh, please like and subscribe. There's the website that go to Pamela. And if you're new to my work, please go to theangelsofatlantis.com. And oh, thank you, Aine. I have an amazing voice, apparently. And please do tune in to all of the extraordinariness. And I know you will agree with me. You will come with me in the gesture that I want to give to this beautiful lady of we can't wait to hear all of the emanations of these remarkable recordings. And please, it's lovely being with you. So please do return again to another one of these congresses. And maybe we need to do more. Bless you, everybody. Namaste, namaste, namaste. And see you all next week with the wonderful Pam Osley. Please stay where you are. And Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Well, complete.